should not move forward, and I encourage the Liberals to listen to the myriad of voices who echo similar apprehensions. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
We'll have to break now. The honourable member for Brandon Souris will have 5 minutes for questions and comments when we return after question period. Statements by members, déclaration de député. The honourable member for Avalon.
Mr. Speaker, William Jackman of Renews Newfoundland entered the cod and seal fisheries as a boy. He commanded sailing vessels on the Labrador and at the ice, and it was at Spotted Islands, Labrador, in 1867 that Captain Jackman was the hero of a striking rescue at sea. In a fierce gale, he saw the fishing schooner Sea Clipper with 27 people aboard run aground on a reef 600 feet from shore. He plunged into the heavy seas and swam to and from the vessel 11 times to carry 11 persons to safety on his back. Even though he was almost paralysed by the cold, he fastened a rope around his waist and made 16 more swims to bring the remaining men and women ashore. None were left behind. Captain Jackman was awarded the Medal of Royal Humane Society of London, England. 150 years later, we remember this man of immense energy and strength, a noble man of great courage and humanity. We are joined in remembering his legacy today by his great-great-grandchild, the Honourable Minister of Veteran Affairs.
The honourable member for Peace River West End.
Mr. Speaker, recently Ali Mwellum, a constituent from Slave Lake, Alberta, whose parents immigrated to Canada, shared his frustration with the Liberal tax hikes. He writes, "My father was 55 years old before he started writing checks to himself. Before that, he was a struggling entrepreneur. He paid the government, the bank, his landlord, the utilities, his suppliers, his staff, but rarely paid himself. When there wasn't enough money left at the end of the month to pay his staff, he and my mother picked up more shifts. My parents sacrificed everything in their life, their family, their money, their time, their health, their house, their relationships, all for a better future. Our families changed our lives changed when we opened up a small pizza shop 15 years ago. Finally, they were able to pay themselves and even put some money away to reinvest in our community, and my parents finally had a retirement plan. The Liberals want to penalize my parents for their life's work. He even accuses them of taking advantage of tax loopholes. That doesn't sound fair to me. Mr. Speaker, there's nothing fair about the Liberals' fair tax proposal. Thank you.
The honourable member for Vaudreuil-Soulanges.
Around this time of year, on any given day, you'll find football teams like the Western Patriots and the St. Lazare Stallions take to the team in my community of Vaudreuil-Soulanges. It's a time of year, Mr. Speaker, that hundreds of kids look forward to. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, about a week and a half ago, one of our Pee Wee players took to the field by the name of Kieran, and he was injured.
While the team captain and others were taking care of him until first responders could get there, all his teammates knelt in a show of support. It took a while for Kieran to get looked after. The practice was long since over, but everybody stayed.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in the House today to first share with the House that Kieran is doing fine and is once again taken to the field. But also, Mr. Speaker, I want to say a special thank you to every one of those players who took a knee as a sign of respect. And, Mr. Speaker, and finally, say thank you to every one of the parents, the managers, and the coaches who do their best to teach our kids not only how to be good players in the field, but also how to be good people. Thank you.
The honourable member for Algoma, Manitoulin, Kapuskasing.
Dependent on clean drinking water. This is something that motivates Autumn Pelletier from Wimcoon unceded territory, who is the only nominee from Canada for the prestigious International Children's Peace Prize. At 13 years old, Autumn is an inspirational activist who opposes environmental degradation and the threat that pipelines represent. She has addressed the Assembly of First Nations and spoke with the Prime Minister on behalf of the water she loves. Autumn says she speaks for water because water doesn't have a voice. She wants her advocacy to inspire people to come together and to try to purify the water, which she says is alive, has a spirit, and hurts every day because of what people are doing. Just like any other young person, Autumn has hopes and dreams for her future. What she doesn't want to imagine is a future where we don't have clean drinking water anywhere. I hope all members will join me in congratulating Autumn and support her efforts by doing all we can to protect our sacred waters. Good luck, Autumn.
The honourable member for Steveston, Richmond East. Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, on October 11th, Trinity Western University in Richmond invited me to speak at an event organized by students, and the theme was Love Letter to Canada.
It showcased the gratitude and love for Canada by 3 students, Cecilia from China, Adriana from Mexico, and Sushil from India. The students expressed their appreciation for the quality of life and the focus on family, faith, and social justice that we Canadians may enjoy in our everyday lives. Monsieur le Président,
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the President of Trinity Western, Bob Kuhn, and Rebecca Swain, Catherine Sazen, and everyone else for inviting me and treating me to such a lovely and instructive afternoon.
Édifiant.
The honourable member for Edmonton-Wetaskiwin.
Mr. Speaker, last week Albertans voted in municipal elections, and in Canada's largest constituency of Edmonton-Wetaskiwin, 4 outstanding leaders retired after nearly a century of collective service among them. Today I rise on behalf of our shared constituents to offer heartfelt appreciation to Mayor Greg Krischke from Leduc, Mayor Camille Berube from Beaumont, Mayor Bill Elliott from Wetaskiwin, and Mayor John Whaley from Leduc County. These men have been exceptional leaders, impassioned champions for their communities. Along with their council colleagues, they translated that passion into meaningful action, and the lives of the people they served were made better and will continue to be better because of their work in office. All the while, Mr. Speaker, each of these mayors conducted their business with the utmost grace, compassion, and genuine goodness. Greg, Camille, Bill, and John, it has been an honor to serve alongside you. God bless you and your families as you embark on your next adventures.
The honourable member for South Shore St. Margaret's.
Mr. Speaker, in 1977, I was 14 years old, and I remember telling my dad that I wanted to be Prime Minister one day. He told me that while I might be good at it, it wasn't likely to happen because women weren't elected to federal government. Mr. Speaker, he wasn't far off. Women received the right to run as candidates in 1920, and the first woman elected federally in Nova Scotia was Colleen Campbell in 1974. Sadly, there have only been 3 women elected in Nova Scotia in the 21st century. In the last 97 years, only 9 women have been elected from my home province, Mr. Speaker, on average less than 1 every 10 years. As the only woman sitting in this House representing my home province, I would like to send a huge thank you to the women who came before me: Colleen Campbell, Roseanne Skoke, Diane Brichette, Mary Clancy, Michelle Dockrell, Wendy Lill, Alexa McDonough, and Megan Leslie. To all the women who come after me, claim your place. You belong in this House. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Yukon.
Mr. Speaker, it is with heavy heart that I rise to recognizing the passing of Chief Mike Smith. Chief Smith was a visionary who cared deeply about the well-being of Yukon First Nations. A residential school survivor, he devoted much of his life to serving his people. As a lawyer, as a 3-term chief of the Kwantlen First Nation, as the past chair of the Council of Yukon First Indians, and as Yukon's regional chief for the Assembly of First Nations. It was a pleasure to work closely with Chief Smith over the years. I remember how proud he was the day he signed the Kwantlen Land Claim and Self-Government Agreement, the first such urban agreement in Canada, giving the Kwantlen people control over their own destiny. While Chief Smith's leadership will be missed, his legacy will live on through his work, his family, and the generations of leaders that he mentored. Goodness cheese, Masicho.
The honourable member for Selkirk Interlake Eastman.
Mr. Speaker, I'm proud to announce that the Justice for Victims of Corrupt Foreign Officials Act was unanimously adopted by Parliament and is now law in Canada. Known as the Sergei Magnitsky Law, this legislation provides Canada with the tools to target foreign officials responsible for gross human rights violations and corruption. While these sanctions are applicable to corrupt individuals from any nation, only one country has taken exception to Canada joining the global Magnitsky campaign for human rights. Vladimir Putin and his Kremlin kleptocrats are threatened by Canada's crackdown on corruption. In response to the Sergei Magnitsky Law receiving royal assent, President Putin placed Bill Browder on Interpol's wanted list for the 5th time. Mr. Browder has been working tirelessly since the murder of Sergei Magnitsky in 2009 in the pursuit of international justice. Putin's petty move is an attempt to prevent Mr. Browder from traveling to Ottawa to celebrate the passage of the Sergei Magnitsky Law. I call on the government to ensure that Mr. Browder is able to travel freely to Canada so that together we can all celebrate this historic milestone.
The honourable member for Halifax.
Mr. Speaker, in Nova Scotia and in Halifax, the October 23rd is HMCS Kootenay Day. The HMCS Kootenay was a Restigouche-class destroyer in the Royal Canadian Navy, and 48 years ago, in 1969, the Kootenay was passing through the English Channel, headed home to Canada after exercises in the United Kingdom. At 8:10 in the morning, the Kootenay was ordered to perform a routine full-power exercise. The trial ended in tragedy. At 8:21 a.m., a mechanical failure suddenly caused an explosion and fire in the starboard gearbox. The resulting fire and smoke claimed the lives of 9 crew and seriously injured 53 others. The tragic incident remains the worst peacetime incident in the history of the Royal Canadian Navy. Mr. Speaker, I invite all members of this House to join me in expressing our deepest gratitude to the crew of the HMCS Kootenay and their loved ones. And may we never forget that today we enjoy all the privileges of being Canadian because of their courage and service. Thank you.
The honourable member for Scarborough Centre.
Mr. Speaker, I rise as a proud Muslim Canadian to recognize October as Islamic Heritage Month. Over 1 million Muslims are proud to call Canada home. Islam is Canada's second largest religion after Christianity. We are your doctors and lawyers, your shopkeepers and teachers, your elected representatives, your neighbors and your friends. As we celebrate Islamic Heritage Month, I invite all Canadians to come learn more about your Muslim Canadian neighbors. Visit your local mosque. We would be happy to welcome you. You will see that we all want the same things: to build a better life and a better community for our children and for the next generations. As we are proud of our Charter of Rights and Freedom, which says every Canadian is free to live how they want, to worship how they want, and that in Canada, no one can tell a woman what they can wear or what they can't wear. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Haliburton, Kawartha Lakes, Brock.
Mr. Speaker, every year 14 students, 2 from each of the 7 secondary schools in my riding, are selected to participate in the Capital Experience Program, an opportunity to learn about careers. During their 3-day stay in Ottawa, they met with Summa Strategies, journalists, diplomats, and many more. In Ottawa today are Vaibhavi Merite and Arden Harrop from Haliburton Highlands, Tyler West and Megan Muscott from Brock, Tyler Saltern and Beth McConkey from Crestwood, Chloe South and Grace Lunenberger from Fenland Falls, Samantha Willock and Landon Bowen from LCVI, Catherine Cadigan and Lauren Good from IE Weldon, Georgia Keenan and Jacob Peck from St. Thomas Aquinas. I'd like to thank all the sponsors, the Lions, the Rotary Clubs, local legions, small businesses for their generosity. It is my hope that these students will be inspired to consider one of the many careers they were exposed to during their visit. I therefore invite my colleagues to join me in welcoming these students to Ottawa.
The honourable member for Cloverdale, Langley City.
Mr. Speaker, today on October 24th, I stand to recognize World Polio Day. Canada has been a global leader in the fight against polio from the very beginning, and we're committed to seeing it through to the end. In June, our government announced that Canada will contribute $100 million over 3 years to the Global Polio Eradication Initiative's Endgame Strategic Plan, which seeks to wipe out polio once and for all to protect children all over the world. Further, I want to recognize the work of Rotary, an organization whose members have committed countless hours and have been at the forefront of polio eradication efforts since 1979. Rotary's efforts to fight this disease are truly commendable, and I applaud their inspiring achievements in fundraising and advocacy, and for mobilizing others to fight for this important issue. Moving forward, our government must ensure it remains steadfast in its commitment to working with organizations like Rotary, as well as our Canadian and international partners, to eradicate polio by 2020. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Esquimalt, Saanich Sooke.
In 2016, the United Nations Human Rights Council created the position of UN Independent Expert on Sexual Orientation and Gender Identity. Unfortunately, distinguished international law professor Vidit Mutarborn completed only 1 year of his 3-year mandate before having to step down for reasons of health. Yet his reports demonstrate the critical importance of this work. Not only did he investigate and document far too many incidents of arrests, torture, and killings, but he also began to lay out a plan for international efforts to eradicate this kind of violence and discrimination. Given the current epidemic of anti-LGBTQ arrests and violence, which has spread from Chechnya to Azerbaijan and now to Tajikistan, it is crucial that this work continue. While I salute the Canadian NGO Rainbow Railroad for helping individuals under threat find a safe haven, and I acknowledge the quiet cooperation of our Canadian government in those efforts, today I'm asking for more than rescue missions. I'm calling on the Minister of Foreign Affairs to make sure that the position of UN independent expert on sexual orientation and gender identity is filled without delay so that the international community can act to end this violence and discrimination.
The honourable member for St. Albert, Edmonton.
Speaker, the sky is blue in Alberta after nearly 80% of voters in Sturgeon River Parkland voted Conservative, and a strong message has been sent to this Liberal government. A government that has made life more difficult for everyday Albertans. Albertans know that there is only one party that consistently has their back, and it is the Conservative Party of Canada. And I want to congratulate Dane Lloyd, our new Conservative MP, on his massive victory. Dane's win is especially meaningful to me as he ably served as my parliamentary assistant prior to the by-election. I know that Dane will be a strong voice for Sturgeon River Parkland and a strong voice to take on this out-of-touch Liberal government. Congratulations, Dane.
The honourable member for Avignon-La-Métis, Matane-Matapédia. Mr. Speaker, another big election night last night, and I'd like to congratulate the two newly elected colleagues, one from Lac-Saint-Jean, and of course the member for Sturgeon River Parkland. Mr. Speaker, being a member of Parliament is an honour and a responsibility that we all feel very strongly about. And despite our differences of opinion, I know that all members on both sides of the House work very hard to represent their constituents. I'd like to thank all the volunteers, supporters, election workers, and voters who expressed their wishes by exercising their right to vote, the very basis of our democracy. Not to mention the unflagging support of families whose significant sacrifices allow us all to come to Ottawa to champion our constituents' causes.
Dream big, work hard, exercise, stay focused, and surround yourself with good people.
Order. Questions orales, oral questions. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, it is now clear that the ability of the Minister of Finance to find new sources of revenue is out of control. Last weekend, we learned that in May 2017, the Liberals refused tax credits to diabetics, running counter to their doctors' recommendations. How can they explain these actions on the backs of diabetics? The Right Honourable the Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we committed to guaranteeing Canadians access to the tax credits they are entitled to. We understand the concerns of these groups. Many people suffer from diabetes. The Bureau of the Minister will be leading with groups this week. We are hiring nurses to assess these claims at the first step of the process, and the Minister has asked the agency to improve data collection to better inform the decision-making process. The Leader of the Opposition.
Credit provides important tax relief for many vulnerable Canadian diabetics, and it's pretty simple how it works. The government determines the qualifying criteria, and the patient's doctor certifies whether the patient meets those criteria. But the Prime Minister decided that his tax collectors in Ottawa have a better understanding of diabetic patients than their own doctors. This is truly the worst of big Liberal government. So the question of the Prime Minister is simple. Who is better placed to determine the needs of diabetics, tax collectors in Ottawa or doctors on the ground?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we are committed to ensuring that all Canadians
Canadians have access to the credits and benefits to which they are entitled. We understand the concerns expressed because many Canadians are touched by diabetes. The Minister's office and the agency are meeting with the concerned groups to continue our work. We are rehiring some of the nurses that were fired by the previous government to assess the disability tax credit applications in the first step of the process. The Minister has asked the agency to improve its data collection to better understand the decision-making process of the agency. Order. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, you don't need to hire more people at the Canada Revenue Agency. You just need to listen to doctors who are helping their patients. The Prime Minister claims he wants to have a fairer tax system, but it's now clear that his definition of that word can't be found in any pages of any English dictionary that I'm aware of, so I'm hoping he can help Canadians better understand his new Liberal definition. Can the Prime Minister tell us, does he believe that raising taxes on vulnerable diabetic Canadians is fair?
Right, Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, in the last election, Canadians had a choice. Go for the Conservative Party that had continued to not grow the economy very quickly and to give opportunity for wealthy people to have more benefits, or to go with the Liberal government that committed to invest in Canadians, to grow the economy by putting more money in the pockets of the middle class. That's exactly what we promised to do. That's exactly what we did. And a little later today, Mr. Speaker, everyone's going to see the results of that plan we put in place that is delivering for all Canadians. Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister continues to increase taxes on middle-class workers. Families are paying more for their bus passes, children's sports, piano classes, tuition, school books. Local businesses will also be paying more taxes. Why is the Prime Minister working so hard to make the life easier for its millionaire friends, but making the lives of those middle-class workers harder by making them pay more? The Right Honourable the Prime Minister. As we saw yesterday evening in Lac-Saint-Jean, Canadians don't believe what the Conservatives are saying. We've brought forward tax credits. The Conservatives didn't help families that way. We're helping children through the Canada Child Benefit that is giving more money to 9 families out of 10, and that is lifting more than 300,000 children out of poverty. We are going to continue to deliver in order to create economic growth and growth for these families. That's what Canadians expect, and that's what we're doing. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Because most recently, the most popular Liberal announcements are when they're announcing that they're cancelling their previous announcements. This government, Canadians will pay more taxes, and they know that this government will always protect their own personal interests and those of their Liberal friends. The Prime Minister has spent weeks defending the Finance Minister's attack on local businesses, while that same minister used loopholes to protect his own personal fortune. So a very simple question. Was the Prime Minister aware that his Finance Minister still controlled millions of dollars of stock in Morneau Chapelle, while his government...
The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we made a promise to Canadians 2 years ago to lower taxes on the middle class, to raise them on the wealthiest 1%, to deliver a Canada Child Benefit that would grow the economy and help Canadian families right across this country, to strengthen the CPP, to create a guaranteed income supplement increase that would help our most vulnerable seniors. These are things we promised to do because they would grow the economy. Mr. Speaker, that's exactly what we're seeing. We have the fastest growth in the G7, have created hundreds of thousands of jobs because putting money in the pockets of Canadians...
The Honourable Member for Rimouski-Nejet-Témiscouata-les-Basques. For 2 weeks now, the Minister of Finance has been hiding behind the Ethics Commissioner to refuse to take responsibility for his own actions. And yet this same Ethics Commissioner had written to him that if his official position provides him with an opportunity to improve his own private interests or those of his parents or friends, he is in a conflict of interest. That's exactly what happened with Bill C-27 that he himself introduced. Mr. Speaker, why is the minister refusing to take responsibility for his own actions?
Premier Ministre.
Right Honourable the Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, what the opposition is implying is false. There is no conflict of interest. The minister followed all the advice from the Ethics Commissioner, including an ethics screen that, according to the Commissioner, is the most effective step. The minister followed all the rules and is even willing to go above and beyond what the Ethics Commissioner recommended. That's what is expected of this government. That is what is expected of all members in this House. The member for Rimouski-Nejet-Témiscouata, Les Basques. For 2 years, he led people to believe that his assets were in a blind.
The defense minister was found in 2002 to have given a $36,000 contract to a company owned by an ex-girlfriend. He was asked to resign from cabinet. When the same year, the Liberal Solicitor General was found to have given a $6 million contract to a college presided by his brother, he was asked to resign. But when the Finance Minister tables a bill that allows him to gain $2 million through shares he never placed in the blind trust, he gets a free pass. Why is the Finance Minister held to lower ethical standards?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the opposition is torquing up insinuations with no basis. The minister followed all the guidance of the Commissioner, including setting up a screen that was determined to be the best measure of compliance by the Commissioner. The minister has followed the rules and is willing to go above and beyond. But I understand why the opposition wants to talk about these things and not about what matters to Canadians, growing the economy, because there is such good news coming, Mr. Speaker, for Canadians. We have the fastest growth in the G7. We've created hundreds of thousands of jobs, and we're continuing to invest and putting money in the pockets of the middle class and those working hard to join it.
The Honourable Member for Rosemont, La Petite Patrie.
Well, the Finance Minister is desperate to change the channel by performing some magic tricks. Canadians understand that he has used public policy for his own advantage. C-27 is not only a bad legislation and an attack against good pension plans, it's also a very good news for some people. For example, Morneau Chappelle.
Yeah.
The Finance Minister was supposed to put his assets in a blind trust. He didn't do it. The Liberals were supposed to tackle the tax loophole of the CEOs. They didn't do it. When the Liberals will stop working for their friends of Bay Street and work for the common good?
Yeah.
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, last night we got an opportunity to hear from Quebecers and people across this country about how we were doing as a country and how we were doing in terms of growing the economy. And the priorities that Canadians showed actually demonstrated that we're on the right track. We are moving forward and continuing to put money in the pockets of the middle class and growing the economy in ways that works for everyone. We will stay focused on Canadians while the opposition stays focused on Liberals.
The Honourable Member for Rosemont, La Petite Patrie.
Les libéraux ont devancé.
The Liberals moved up the fiscal update because they are desperately trying to extricate themselves from a scandal. But people aren't fools. The Minister of Finance tabled a bill that directly profits his company, a company that should have been put in a blind trust, just like he didn't deal with the schemes of big CEOs. Rather than attack people who take the bus, who get employee discounts, rather than attack people suffering from diabetes, perhaps the Liberals could go after their friends on Bay Street. Honourable the Prime Minister. The Liberals did go and see the people in Lac-Saint-Jean, Mr. Speaker. We had conversations on how things were going in their area, what kind of assistance they needed, what we can do to help them, and what more we can do. And the people of Lac-Saint-Jean told me that things were going well. They thanked us for our work, and they put their trust in us in sending Richard Hébert to sit here in the House of Commons to be the next member of Parliament for Lac-Saint-Jean. That's exactly what we wanted to do. That's what we'll be announcing again this afternoon. We are delivering a plan that works for Canadians. The Honourable Member for Richmond, Athabasca. Mr. Speaker, Here is what is clear. On February 20th, 2013, 2 years before he took on his current position, the Minister of Finance advocated for legislation enabling target benefit plans. Then on October 19, 2016, 3 years later, the minister brought in Bill C-27, whose purpose, coincidentally, is to do just that. When will the Minister of Finance admit that he failed in his mandate and admit that he is in a total conflict of interest, which the $2 million in profit that he has made since becoming minister only serves to prove? Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Here are the facts. As soon as he started his mandate, the minister met the Ethics Commissioner in order to make sure he complied with all the rules. He followed all her recommendations, and last week he announced that he was going even further. But if he wants more facts, 2 years ago, we were wondering, where are we heading into a recession? Well, after 2 years of this Minister of Finance's work, it's clear that Canada is not in a recession. It is in an enviable position in terms of its economic growth. The Honourable Member for Richmond-Athabasca. Mr. Speaker, people aren't fools. In this House, the minister tabled a bill that would benefit his own company while he was still receiving dividends. We're talking about more than $65,000 a month. This is clearly a conflict of interest. If this government is claiming to have so much integrity and to be so transparent, then it should prove that today and have the minister give us a clear answer. Did he, yes or no, tell the Ethics Commissioner that he was in a clear conflict of interest? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Mr. Speaker, there is no conflict of interest. Why? Because at the very beginning of his mandate, the minister met the Ethics Commissioner in order to ensure that he was complying with all the rules and her recommendations, including an ethics screen. That was done from the very outset. And last week, the minister went even further by announcing that he would divest himself of his Morneau-Chapelle assets and that all those assets would be put in a blind trust so that he could continue to do the important work that he is doing for all Canadians, making sure that our economy is growing, making sure that there's prosperity for all. Thank you.
Milton.
Mr. Speaker, these are the facts as we know it. As Executive Chair of Morneau-Chapelle, the minister lobbied on behalf of targeted pension plans. When he became the minister, he actually brought legislation in to make these law. He also collected dividends from the company because he still had shares. Now, the honourable member mentioned an ethics screen, and that may very well be in place, but I want to know something specific. Given all of these conflicts around this issue, did the minister recuse himself on any of the discussions around C-27?
Honourable Parliament, the Minister of Finance.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Finance did put in place an ethics screen, which was recommended by the Ethics Commissioner, and she described it as the best measure of compliance possible. He's always followed her recommendations, will continue to do so, to work in a forthcoming and transparent manner with the Ethics Commissioner, going above and beyond her recommendations. Thank you, Mr.
For Milton.
Mr. Speaker, did the ethics screen enable the minister to have discussions on a company that he controlled, that he received $65,000 a month from, that he himself lobbied for in the past? Now, the minister would say to us, oh, you're so concerned about my personal finances. Actually, we're not. We're caring far much more about exactly what ethical screen he had in place and if he did the right thing. Mr. Speaker, this isn't about Bay Street. This is about Main Street. And Canadians want to know, did the minister recuse himself when he had these discussions on C-27?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I can assure the member that the Finance Minister from the get-go has always worked with the Ethics Commissioner to make sure that he's in full compliance with the rules that govern us all as parliamentarians and respecting her recommendation, and that he's gone even further, going above and beyond her recommendations. Now, working for Main Street is exactly what the Finance Minister has done for the last 2 years, lowering taxes for 9 million Canadians, steering the Canadian economy back into the direction of growth and prosperity for all. I think we can be very proud of our Finance Minister. Thank you.
Honourable Member for Barrie Innisfil.
Well, Mr. Speaker, share prices for Morneau-Chapelle went up by 5% the day after the Finance Minister tabled Bill C-27. The bill directly affects pensions, which Morneau-Chapelle is in the business of selling. This is a clear conflict of interest. The minister promised this House, the Ethics Commissioner, the media, and anyone who would listen that he would recuse himself from decisions involving Morneau-Chapelle, but he hasn't done that. Did the minister receive written approval from the Ethics Commissioner to introduce pension legislation that turned out to be a windfall for the minister and for Morneau-Chapelle?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I can assure my colleague that the Minister of Finance has always worked with the Ethics Commissioner and will continue to do so in order to ensure that he is in compliance with the rules. Last week, he announced that he was going even further to avoid any distraction away from the important work he's doing for Canadians. What's that work? 400,000 jobs, most of them being full-time, created over the past few years. The highest economic growth in the G7. And that's something that they cannot claim they did after 10 years.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the facts are clear. The minister introduced legislation that directly benefits the company he owns millions of shares in. In fact, his shares have increased by a whopping 33% since the minister was sworn in. While in charge of Morneau Shepell, he lobbied for the exact legislation that he now proposes in C-27. The minister is right about one thing. His conflicts of interest are, in fact, serious distractions. Does the minister actually believe that it was ethical of him to table C-27, knowing it would further feather his own nest?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Ethics Commissioner is there to ensure that integrity of this institution remains unaffected. We believe the Ethics Commissioner, we believe in her recommendations, and the Minister of Finance has always followed those recommendations to ensure that it's in full compliance. Last week he said he'd go even further to continue his important work. And I would invite all members at 4 o'clock to come here and listen to how well the economy is going for all Canadians. The Honourable Member for Jonquière. Yesterday, several stakeholders gathered before the Legislative Assembly of Quebec over the NAFTA negotiations. The Quebec Premier and these socioeconomic stakeholders were all clear that they will not back down on supply management and cultural exemptions. The Premier of Quebec even said that the asks of the American administration were radical and frankly unacceptable. When will the Minister of Foreign Affairs stand up to Donald Trump and tell him that supply management and cultural exemptions are not negotiable? Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for her question, and I would like to assure her and assure all my colleagues and assure all Canadians and Quebecers that cultural exemption is a priority for our government, as is supply management. It is a priority for our government. And I also want to underscore the fact that these are difficult negotiations. This is a very protectionist administration, but we are working very hard, and we will continue to work very hard to defend the national interests of Canada.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals have yet to stand up to the bullying tactics by the Trump administration. U.S. Trade Representative Lighthizer said it's unreasonable to expect that the United States will continue to guarantee U.S. companies to invest in Canada, primarily for export to the United States in NAFTA. This is a serious swipe at our manufacturing supply chains in Canada and our jobs. Enough is enough. Even the Liberal member from Kenora agrees that being charming and polite isn't working. We need a stronger approach. When will the minister stand up against these blatant and extremely aggressive U.S. threats?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, let me assure the member opposite and all Canadians that at the negotiating table, I absolutely stand up for the Canadian national interest. Now, I believe that it's right to be polite, and when we say no with a smile. But I want to say to Canadians, we will always stand up for our national interest, and we will stand up for Canadian values.
The Honourable Member for Beauce. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Finance has been profiting from his family business, Morneau Shepell. We learned yesterday that Morneau Shepell benefited from dealings with Bombardier. And as you know, Bombardier has received hundreds of thousands of dollars in subsidies from the government. There's a clear conflict of interest when subsidies are granted to a company and indirectly benefit Morneau Shepell's business and the Minister of Finance. Can the minister tell us that he recused himself from all discussions involving Bombardier? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I mentioned earlier, the Minister of Finance has always worked with the ex-Commissioner, will continue to do so proactively and transparently in order to ensure that he is fully compliant. Now, Mr. Speaker, I can understand that after 10 years when they had the worst performance ever since the Second World War and they neglected the middle class for those 10 years, I can understand why they wouldn't want us to be in too much of a contrast with them, because we have created 400,000 jobs, lifted children out of poverty, increased the GIS. That's the record of this Minister of Finance. The Honourable Member for Beauce. Mr. Speaker, what the government doesn't realize is that we're talking about the Minister of Finance's conflict of interest. He doesn't appreciate that, does he? The Minister of Finance is working for his personal interests, and he isn't stopping this conflict of interest situation. There are many examples. There's Bill C-27, for example. Then there are the dealings with Bombardier. And then there's the most blatant example, the fact that the minister said that he was going to put his assets in a blind trust and didn't end up doing so for 2 years. So he misled the House on that, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, how can the Minister of Finance fulfill his role as the finance minister when he is in such a clear conflict of interest? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Minister of Finance can fulfill his role by following the recommendations of the Ethics Commissioner, working with her as he has from the very outset in order to make sure that he is compliant with all the rules governing this House. That's what he did since his election, and he's even going further than what she recommended. The Minister of Finance is focusing on working for all Canadians, for the Canadian economy, and that's what he's been doing for 2 years, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, today we learned that Morneau Chappelle is managing Bombardier's insurance and pension plans. As former chairman, the finance minister would have known about this contract. Clearly, the finance minister's family company has a huge interest in Bombardier's survival. Last year, the Liberals gave a bailout of over $300 million to this company. Did the finance minister recuse himself from all discussions around the Bombardier bailout?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I can reassure the member that the Minister of Finance has always worked with the Ethics Commissioner, followed her recommendations from the very beginning, and established a screen to avoid any conflict of interest. That screen has been in place since the very beginning of his mandate, and last week the Minister announced that he would go further to avoid any distraction away from the work he's doing from Canadians, that is, prosperity and growth for all.
Mr. Speaker, as much as the Liberals are hoping to just move along, the fact is these are very serious conflicts of interest. Canadians have questions. The Minister of Finance, whether he likes it or not, answers to Canadians. Mr. Speaker, regarding the connection with Bombardier that the Finance Minister has, did the Finance Minister inform the Ethics Commissioner that Morneau Chappelle did business with Bombardier, or did he forget about that, just like he forgot about his villa in France?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
I can reassure the member that the Finance Minister has, from the get-go, worked with the Ethics Commissioner in a transparent and forthcoming manner, in a proactive manner, to make sure that he respects all the rules and he follows all the recommendations, namely to put up a conflict of interest screen, which he has done. Now, Mr. Speaker, the Finance Minister will keep working for Canadians, as he's done, with remarkable results, growing our economy at the fastest pace in the G7. We are the envy of the world under the stewardship of this Finance Minister. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Abitibi Bay James AU. Last year, the Human Rights Tribunal determined that the federal government was guilty of discrimination against First Nations children. Internal correspondence confirms that Health Canada was aware of these serious failings but had no intention whatsoever of making changes. After 2 years and 3 compliance orders, the Liberals have still done nothing. When will the minister deal with the enormous gap in services for First Nations children, or does the most important relationship exclude Indigenous children? The Honourable Minister of Indigenous Services.
Documents that the member opposite is referring to are based on Jordan's Principle, which was passed in this House in 2007. Tragically, there were 0 cases approved under the previous government. As soon as our government came into power, we got the resources, hundreds of millions of dollars, to fully implement Jordan's Principle. I'm pleased to report to this House that now 20,000 cases have been approved. Children are getting access to the care that they need and will continue to do this work. Woo.
Honourable Member for Timmins, James Bay.
So speaks the woman who's fighting Cindy Blockstock in federal court.
You know, they fought Cindy Blackstock for 12 years, tooth and nail. Now they're fighting them in court. But the internal documents show that when the ruling came down, her top officials didn't even know what Jordan's principle is or how children are being routinely denied services. But Health Canada did draw a line in the sand that they would not accept the definition that would, quote, ensure that First Nation children have access to publicly available health and social services. Will the minister please explain why Indigenous children do not have that right under her government?
Honourable Minister of Indigenous Services.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to start by correcting the record that, in fact, I'm working very closely with Dr. Cindy Blackstock. I meet with her on a regular basis, including yesterday, and my staff meets with her regularly as well. We are determined to bring justice to Indigenous children in this country. We know that there are absolutely unacceptable gaps that exist in child and family services, that children are being apprehended at rates that are the highest in the world, and we will work with Dr. Cindy Blackstock and First Nations, Métis and Inuit leaders to bring justice for Indigenous children.
Honourable Member for New Brunswick Southwest.
Mr. Speaker, this morning I met with female university presidents. We discussed the challenges of social media messaging, opportunities to increase diversity and university leadership, and their plan moving forward. Can the Minister for the Status of Women update this House how this government is leading by example and delivering results for gender equality? Thank you.
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, my honourable colleague from New Brunswick Southwest knows that gender equality is fundamental to our collective success as a country and at the core of our government's feminist agenda. And we're seeing the results, more economic growth. But in this pursuit, Mr. Speaker, our words matter just as our actions do. So when members across the aisle label our daughters as feminazis, as Barbies, it sets us all back. Our sons and daughters are watching, Mr. Speaker. Let us all lead by example.
The Honourable Member for Sarnia-Lambton.
Mr. Speaker, while the Liberal government is doing everything it can to protect the finance minister with his conflicts of interest and his 9 numbered companies with links to Barbados, villas in France, pension plans for Morneau Chapelle, and now Bombardier, they're reaching into the pockets of disabled people to pay for their spending problem. Diabetes Canada says they're concerned that 80% of diabetics making applications are now being denied, whereas a year ago 80% were being approved. Why do the Liberals care more about protecting the wealthy finance minister than people with type 1 diabetes?
The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Our government has committed to allowing all Canadians to access the credits that they are entitled to. The concerns raised by these groups are significant. We've already met these groups and we will continue our work with them. Unlike the former government, in Budget 2017, our government made this credit more accessible by allowing nurses to complete the application forms. And we are going to look carefully at data collection for this credit in order to look at the decision-making process of the agency.
Ridge.
Well, Mr. Speaker, disability tax credit applications for type 1 diabetics have gone from 80% approval to 80% rejection since May of 2017. Yesterday, the minister denied that she had anything to do with this, but we've obtained a letter that she wrote in July defending these rejections and confirming that CRA changed the forms for doctors. She wrote, adults who independently manage their insulin therapy are unlikely to meet the 14-hour requirement. Why did the minister defend these rejections?
The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Mr. Speaker, our government has committed to allowing all Canadians to access the credits and benefits they are entitled to. Contrary to the previous government, we have simplified forms. Our government has made the tax credit much more accessible by allowing nurse practitioners to complete application forms. We will always work to make sure that people get the credits they are entitled to and protect the Canadian public. The Honourable Member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier. Mr. Speaker, after having conned small business owners and retail employees. Now it's the turn of people suffering from type 1 diabetes to be victims of the Liberal technique. Yesterday, the Minister of the Canada Revenue Agency said that she had not given any specific instructions and didn't know what was going on in her department. The Minister of Finance, he knows very well what's going on from his throne. He's raising himself above the law and sending his fellow minister to be slaughtered. Can the minister tell this House if people with type 1 diabetes will have retroactive access to the tax credit? The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Mr. Speaker, I understand very well the concerns of people who have diabetes. My spouse died of complications of diabetes. We've met these groups. We've met with doctors. We continue to work with public servants. We have simplified the forms. We've hired nurse practitioners. And contrary to the previous government, we are going to continue to work to make sure that the disability tax credit is even more accessible.
The member for Barrie, Springwater, Oro-Medonte.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals cut off diabetics from the disability tax credit with the stroke of this minister's pen. Meanwhile, they allow the finance minister to use loopholes so he can hide millions of dollars of investments from Canadians. But when Canadians suffering from diabetes try to access the tax credit, the Liberals claim that they are somehow cheating the system. Why are the Liberals working so hard to protect the finance minister from paying his fair share while they go after Canadians suffering from diabetes?
The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Mr. Speaker, I understand very well what diabetes can involve for families. As I said, my spouse died of complications due to diabetes. We've worked with these groups. Last year, we met with people from various diabetes associations. We're working with doctors, and our objective has always been to simplify the forms and to make tax credits more accessible for people who are handicapped.
Mr. Speaker, one of the first actions taken by the Minister of Science was to recruit Professor David Naylor to review federal science funding. That's a great move. Our leader, Jagmeet Singh, who has a degree in biology, supports the Naylor report, as does most of Canada's scientific community. Can the minister tell us how many of the 35 report recommendations the government intends to implement? And most importantly, will they bring forward legislation to establish an independent National Advisory Council on Research and Innovation? Thank you.
Honourable Minister of Science.
Mr. Speaker, our government was elected on a promise to put science at the heart of decision-making. After a decade of neglect, I'm working to put people, our researchers, at the heart of how we think about science and how we fund science, whether that is by ensuring our young researchers have the supports they need to succeed, or addressing the chronic underrepresentation of women and visible minorities. Our government will ensure that people are at the forefront of Canadian science.
The Honourable Member for Nanaimo, Ladysmith.
Sunday night, the 90-foot vessel Anapaea sank in Ladysmith Harbour, leaking oil into the ocean. In 2014, Transport Canada identified this 100-year-old boat as a vessel of concern. So the government knew that it posed a threat, but it took no action until it sank. We're grateful for the Coast Guard's swift action, but this is yet another example of the Liberal government's failed boat-by-boat approach on abandoned vessels. Why did the government do nothing to prevent this vessel sinking? And will the government support my legislation to solve abandoned vessels once and for all?
Minister of Transport.
Mr. Speaker, as you know, we're very proud of having announced the Oceans Protection Plan. And in relation to vessels of concern, we announced the Abandoned Boats Program, a $6.8 million program. Last May, we announced also a small craft harbor, federal fisheries harbor boat cleanup program. We will be acceding to the Nairobi Protocol, and later this year we will be introducing legislation dealing with vessels of concern. I think we're covering the waterfront, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Lévis-Lobinière. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Finance does not seem to like talking about his personal finances. However, he can do so with the Ethics Commissioner as outlined in the Conflict of Interest Act. Mr. Speaker, regarding the tax treaty between Canada and Barbados, Canadians want the Minister of Finance to avoid putting himself in another conflict of interest. Did he recuse himself from any discussion of this tax treaty, yes or no? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Minister of Finance has always worked with the Ethics Commissioner and will continue to do so, working transparently, openly, and proactively to make sure that all the laws are respected and upheld. He's done so from the very beginning and is now putting a wall up to prevent conflicts of interest. He has been working well for 2 years. I understand that they don't want to compare their track record with ours because in their case, they were not up to the task.
Morneau Chappelle is a financial services company with operations in Canada. We now know that they also hold a tax-sheltered corporation in Barbados. For 2 years, the finance minister secretly owned millions of dollars of Morneau Chappelle shares. For 2 years, the minister has resisted calls to address problems with the Canada-Barbados tax treaty, saying, let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater. Some baby, some bathwater, Mr. Speaker. Did the minister declare his Morneau Chappelle Barbados tax treaty conflict of interest to the Ethics Commissioner, yes or no?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
For years, the Finance Minister has worked with the Ethics Commissioner to make sure that all recommendations are followed. For 2 years, Mr. Speaker, the Finance Minister has grown our economy at its fastest pace in the last decade, has reduced unemployment to its lowest level since 2008, has created 400,000 jobs, most of them full-time, has reduced child poverty by 40%, has helped 900,000 seniors. That's what the Finance Minister has been doing for the last 2 years. They should take a note.
The Honourable Member for Chilliwack Hope.
Let's try again, Mr. Speaker. The finance minister secretly held millions of dollars of Morneau Chappelle shares for the last 2 years. The same company has a tax-sheltered corporation in Barbados. The minister is responsible for negotiating the Canada-Barbados tax treaty. A good deal for Morneau Chappelle in Barbados could mean a good deal of money for the minister. Did the minister declare his conflict of interest on the Morneau Chappelle Barbados tax treaty file? Did he recuse himself from the negotiations? Or do ethics rules like this not apply to Liberals like him?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I mentioned, I want to reassure the member that the Minister of Finance has always followed the recommendations of the Ethics Commissioner by implementing a wall to prevent a conflict of interest, a measure that the Ethics Commissioner described as being the most effective measure. Last week, he decided to go even further to continue his important work for the Canadian economy and all Canadians to reduce inequalities and ensure inclusive prosperity in this country. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Alfred Pellan. Mr. Speaker, all Canadians cherish our democracy. Yesterday, they cast their ballots in the ridings of Lac-Saint-Jean in Quebec and Sturgeon River Parkland in Alberta. 2 new MPs were elected to represent their fellow citizens here with us. Can the Minister of Democratic Institutions update this House on steps taken by our government to reinforce our democracy? The Honourable Minister of Democratic Institutions. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my honourable colleague from Alfred Pellan for his question. I was proud to table Bill C-50, which will increase openness and transparency for fundraising for the Prime Minister, the Cabinet, and leadership candidates and the opposition. I am pleased that the committee has reported back on this bill to the House. While I'm here, please allow me to congratulate the 2 members for Lac-Saint-Jean and Sturgeon River Parkland, as well as all the candidates and volunteers who participated in our democracy. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Calgary-Nose Hill.
Mr. Speaker, earlier the Status of Women Minister made some insinuations around Barbies and feminazis. I could stand up here and point out that the Prime Minister's Parliamentary Secretary in 2007 posted, ha ha ha, I'm sure you cleaned it up nicely with you being a woman and all. It's in your DNA. So, my question for the Prime Minister is this. Will he get his female cabinet ministers to stand up here and have an argument about who's more sexist or another? Or will he start doing actual things for women, like protecting Yazidi sex slaves, like correcting the sham of the missing and murdered Indigenous women, condemning the ruling around
The Honourable Minister for the Status of Women. Order.
Mr. Speaker, as my honourable colleagues pointed out, we have a great deal of work to do to address and prevent gender-based violence.
I'm going to ask members to not be yelling, to not be commenting when someone else has the floor. Members know better than that. Order. It's not appropriate. The Honourable Minister for the Status of Women has the floor.
As my honourable colleagues mentioned, we have a great deal of work to do to address and prevent gender-based violence. Our government, under the leadership of our Prime Minister, is doing just that. As I said before, our actions matter, but so do our words. And words like feminazi, words like Barbie, words like the words that my honourable colleague mentioned are not helping us advance the shared cause of gender equality.
The Honourable Member for Windsor-Tecumseh.
Mr. Speaker, despite having doctor's certifications of eligibility, large numbers of diabetics are being denied the disability tax credit. First employee discounts and now diabetics, I wonder who's next. Canadians deserve better than the talking points that we've heard in this chamber. The onus isn't on the application process, it's on the Minister of Revenue. So I ask today, Mr. Speaker, will the Minister of Revenue tell this House that she will fully restore the meaning of this tax credit for type 1 diabetics?
The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Mr. Speaker, our government has committed to making sure that everyone receives the credits and benefits they are entitled to. I want to reassure my colleague from the other side that the law has not changed. No interpretation of the law has changed. Our objective remains that we want to make sure that people get the credits that they are entitled to. Quite the contrary, we are facilitating access of disabled persons by allowing nurse practitioners to fill out forms because we know in certain regions it's hard to get access to a doctor. That is the type of work we are doing with the Canadian public.
On.
Mr. Speaker, improving energy efficiency is one of the most efficient and effective, cost-effective ways to address the global climate change challenge. Today we celebrate the second annual Energy Star Day in Canada. Could the Minister of Natural Resources please tell the House about this program and the benefits provided to Canadians?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Natural Resources.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank the member from King Vaughan for that excellent question, her advocacy, and the excellent work she is doing as chair of the House Environment Committee. Our government is proud to collaborate on Energy Star, along with more than 1,500 organizations, to help Canadians save money on their utility bills while protecting our planet. Energy efficiency benefits everyone, reducing costs, improving competitiveness and productivity, and creating good middle-class jobs. On Energy Star Day, we encourage all Canadians to make a commitment to save energy and protect our environment. Thank you.
Honourable Member for Cypress Hills Grasslands.
Mr. Speaker, Liberal Bill C-51 eliminates criminal code protection for clergy and places of worship across Canada. Last week, the minister either accidentally or deliberately misled Canadians when she insisted that rabbis and imams are not defined as clergy. That's nonsense. CRA, Border Services, and Stats Canada have always included them in the government's definition of clergy. The number of attacks and incidents are increasing. These provisions are still being used in court. When will the minister stop putting faith communities at risk and leave these protections in the criminal code?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Canadians, regardless of their religions, must be able to practice their religion's faith without fear or interference. I would like to assure the member opposite that the Criminal Code contains comprehensive provisions, including or regarding disturbances that protect all Canadians, including clergy. Existing offences of general application will remain available to respond to the conduct targeted by such offences. These offences are easier to prove and broader in scope, and will provide protection to religious leaders of all faiths.
The Honourable Member for Rivière-du-Nord. Mr. Speaker, it is up to the National Assembly and only the National Assembly to legislate on matters that fall under its jurisdiction. Neither Toronto, nor Calgary, nor Ottawa can decide on the rules of societal coexistence in Quebec. If the National Assembly decides that services provided by the Quebec state must be given and received with faces uncovered, that is its most absolute right. Is it too much to ask the Minister of Heritage to respect the jurisdiction of Quebec's National Assembly, or, like Netflix, does she think she is above the law? The Honourable Minister of Canadian Heritage. Mr. Speaker, the matter of diversity has always been clear for us. We have always said that we are going to defend the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and at the same time, it's not up to the state to tell a person what to wear or not. We're going to follow the discussion in the next few days and make sure that we carefully study the application of the law. The Honourable Member for Fontigny. A recent OECD study shows that countries who chose to tax Netflix, well, they get good results, Mr. Speaker. When the Minister of Heritage tells us that no country in the world has been able to find a way to do it, she's talking nonsense. Not only are these alternative facts, but experts say that all it takes is political will. Does the minister realize that her lack of political will and vision threaten the very future of television in Quebec? The Honourable Minister of Canadian Heritage. Mr. Speaker, I hear the concerns of the cultural sector regarding funding and protection of Francophone culture and Quebecois culture. That is why we have invested in the Canada Media Fund in order to support television in Quebec. That is why we have made sure that we've massively invested in arts and culture, more than $2.2 billion, and now I presented my vision 2 weeks ago, and I also have a reform plan to make sure that we modernize our legislation, namely on broadcasting, in order to protect culture in a digital era. I would like to call attention of the members to Her Excellency Laura Baldrini, President of the Chamber of Deputies of the Swiss Confederation.
I would also like to draw to the attention of honourable members the presence in the gallery of Her Excellency Laura Baldrini, President of the Chamber of Deputies of the Italian Republic. Comme il est 15h05.
It being 3:05, the House will now proceed to the taking of the deferred recorded division on the motion of Mr. Cullen relating to the business of supply. Call in the members.
Take long. The question is as follows. Mr. Cullen, seconded by Mr. Caron, moved that given the Minister of Finance, A, after being elected to Parliament in 2015, shall I dispense? No. Led Canadians to believe that he had placed his shares in Morneau Chapelle into a blind trust while never having done so. B, used a loophole in the Conflict of Interest Act to place his shares in a private numbered company instead of divesting them or placing them in a blind trust. C, on October 19, 2016, sponsored Bill C-27, an act to amend the Pension Benefit Standards Act 1985, a bill that would reasonably be expected to profit Morneau Chapelle and the Minister of Finance in light of his continued ownership of shares in Morneau Chapelle through a company he controls. D, was and remains in charge of regulating the pension industry in which he has had a personal economic interest, and E, has failed to live up to the ethical standards set forth by the Prime Minister in his mandate letter to the Minister. The House call on the Minister of Finance to apologize to the House and to Canadians for breaking their trust, and the House call on the government to immediately close the loopholes in the Conflict of Interest Act, as recommended by the Conflict of Interest and Ethics Commissioner, in order to prevent a Minister of the Crown from personally benefiting from their position or creating the perception thereof. All those in favor of the motion will please rise.
Mr. Julian.
Mr. Julian.
Mr. Mulcair.
Mr. Mulcair.
Ms. Duncan Edmonton Strathcona.
Ms. Duncan Edmonton Strathcona.
Mr. Christopherson.
Mr. Christopherson.
Mr. Angus.
Mr. Angus.
Mr. Cullen.
Mr. Cullen.
Mr. Massey Windsor West.
Massey Windsor West.
Mr. Garrison.
Mr. Garrison.
Madame Boutin-Sweet.
Madame Boutin-Sweet.
Ms. Matheson.
Ms. Matheson.
Mr. Dubé.
Monsieur Dubé.
Mr. Davies.
Mr. Davies.
Mr. Dussault.
Monsieur Dussault.
Madame Moore.
Madame Moore.
Mr. Stewart.
Mr. Stewart.
Ms. Kwan.
Miss Kwan.
Monsieur Aubin.
Monsieur Aubin.
Madame Quash.
Madame Quash.
Monsieur Saganache.
Monsieur Saganache.
Madame Brosseau.
Madame Brosseau.
Mr. Blakey.
Mr. Blakey.
Madame Sans-Souci.
Madame Sans-Souci.
Madame Trudel.
Madame Trudel.
Mr. Weir.
Mr. Weir.
Mr. Duval.
Mr. Duval.
Mr. Stetsky.
Mr. Stetsky.
Mr. Canning.
Mr. Canning.
Mr. John.
Mr. John.
Ms. Ramsey.
Ms. Ramsey.
Ms. Malcolmson.
Ms. Malcolmson.
Ms. Jolibois.
Ms. Jolibois.
Ms. Hardcastle.
Ms. Hardcastle.
Madame Hughes.
Madame Hughes.
Mr. Scheer.
Mr. Scheer.
Mr. Nicholson.
Mr. Nicholson.
Ms. Finley.
Ms. Finley.
Mr. Denis Bellechasse, des Chemins Lévis.
Mr. Blaney Bellechasse, des Chemins Lévis.
Mr.